Well, we've been waiting anxiously to see the EPA numbers released for a certified Model Y out of Giga Austin. So there's been a lot of attention on the EPA's website to try to see when a certification will be available. Well, just yesterday, something did pop up, but it wasn't what we were expecting. So as we all know, we're anticipating the Model Y out of Giga Austin to be certified by the EPA, which is the last certification needed in order for Tesla to start making customer deliveries of a Giga Austin made Model Y. Now, we still don't know, is it going to be a long range? Is it going to be a performance? That is coming out of Giga Austin. And what does that mean for Fremont? So there's a lot of open questions. Just yesterday, released on the EPA's website, is a new variant of the Model Y, and it's just listed as the 2022 Tesla Model Y all-wheel drive. So there are now 4 different Model Ys on the EPA's website that are certified. Of course, we have the standard range Model Y, which was certified and is still not sold here in the United States. This was canceled some time ago. It comes with 244 miles, 129 miles per gallon equivalent. We also have the 2022 Tesla Model Y long range all-wheel drive, which is the car that you can buy today at 330 miles, 122 MPGe, and a sticker price now of $59,990. Finally, the other variant that you can buy today, the Performance Model Y at 303 miles, 111 MPGe, and $64,990. Now here's where this new one just popped up yesterday. It is listed as a 2022 Tesla Model Y all-wheel drive. Comes with 279 miles and 123 MPGe. So what the heck is this Tesla Model Y? Well, it's interesting because it has the same naming convention as the standard range Model Y, except of course listed as all-wheel drive instead of rear-wheel drive. So it would seem that based solely on this naming convention, it would be a Tesla Model Y standard range all-wheel drive. So it's interesting that this new variant popped up. Seems like it's a standard range. It has like 50 less miles than the long range all-wheel drive, and we weren't really anticipating this. Now there's been a lot of talk of the standard range coming back because prices have gone up so much this year, but nobody really had on the radar an all-wheel drive standard range. After all, the standard range variant has always been the economical option, and in keeping it an economical option, it's always been a rear-wheel drive option. But this one has 2 motors. Now let's press forward and assume that it is a standard range all-wheel drive Model Y. If that is the case, what will it be priced? So the long-range Model Y went up by $10,000 since March of 21, which is the last month that Tesla offered the standard range Model Y. If you look over at the Model 3, the standard range plus Model 3 went up by $7,000 since March of 2021. So that gives us kind of an idea of how much of an increase we should expect. Now, where would the pricing be though? So if we look at the standard range Model Y in March of 21 compared to the long range Model Y in 21, here's where those prices were. The standard range was $41,990 and the long range was $49,990. So there was an $8,000 delta there in the middle. So let's assume it's going to be right in between the two, at $4,000 more than the standard range, $4,000 less than the long range all-wheel drive. If that is true, then back in March of 21, this would have been $45,990. Now, again, we saw price increases throughout the year. So if it follows the trajectory of the Model 3 Standard Range Plus, we would see $7,000 increase. If it followed the trajectory of the Model Y long range all-wheel drive, we'd have a $10,000 higher price today. So that puts us somewhere between $52,990 and $55,990. So that would give us an option that was $7,000 to $4,000 less than the current cheapest Model Y on the market, but you'd still have all-wheel drive and 280 miles. Now it's not 330, but 280 is still a really strong number. And if you remember, the Performance Model Y when it launched was 280 miles. So right around that 300 miles has continued to be a benchmark across the industry. So at 280, you're a little bit less, but it should come at a much more favorable price tag than what we have available today for the Model Y. Now here's where things get really interesting, and you really got to start to plow through the details to figure out what exactly is this thing powered by. So as we know, there are 3 potential options that could be powering this new all-wheel drive Model Y. First, it could be an LFP battery pack. I do think that this is the least likely, but there is some credibility to really considering could an LFP battery be used. Of course, Tesla started using LFP batteries for standard range Model 3s last year, and they did say in North America, standard range models would be using LFP batteries. This is a great idea. They have plenty of capacity over in China with the LFP battery packs, and transitioning a Model Y version to an LFP makes perfect sense because you don't need to improve output here domestically to be able to offer this new trim. Now, on one hand, it makes sense because it has less miles of range. However, here's where things become an issue. It has a slightly higher MPGe than the long range all-wheel drive. So even though it has less miles, it's more efficient. So the LFP battery pack is going to have to be heavier because it's going to need more cells to produce similar range. An LFP battery pack, you're going to get about 70% of the output of a 2170 cell. So you're going to need quite a bit more battery in order to meet the range you would get out of a 2170 battery pack. And in reality, we're seeing a 15% reduction in range. So it would need to be a larger battery pack if it was LFP, meaning it should be heavier and less efficient, not more. So I think that the LFP is off the table at this time. Now, the second option, it could be a new version of the 2170, perhaps a smaller version of the 2170. Well, if that was the case, it would be pretty simple math. It would need to be 15% less than the current long-range Model Y, which is an 82 kilowatt-hour battery pack. So it'd have to go down to a 70 kilowatt-hour battery pack. The second very likely alternative to this is something we've been waiting for a long time, which is the 4680 battery pack. Now, if it was indeed a 4680 battery pack, it would need to be quite a bit smaller than the existing long-range all-wheel drive in a battery pack to get 279 miles of range. There is one other clue here that I see continues to get missed, and I want to talk about it because it's an important key to this equation. Now, on the final page of the specs of this Model Y variant, it does say that this takes 9.4 hours to charge at 240 volts. On the flip side, if you look at the long-range all-wheel drive as tested by the EPA, it is 11.5 hours to charge on that same 240 volts. So that's quite a big difference, meaning that the battery pack would indeed have to be smaller, again leaving credence to it cannot be an LFP battery pack. So now let's dive into the numbers because this is where things are going to get really interesting. As we know, the 4680 cells should be 16% more efficient. That means the same size battery pack that's in the long-range all-wheel drive today would actually have 382 miles of range if it was the same size as the 2170 pack in it today. So that gives us 4.65 miles per kilowatt hour of battery. So in order for a 4680 battery pack to be used here and to only get about 280 miles, it would have to be 60 kilowatt hours. The problem there then becomes the fact that that's 27% smaller. So that is significantly smaller battery pack, and unfortunately when you look at the charging side of things, it doesn't add up. The math just doesn't make sense. Charging is 18% faster, not 27% faster. So I think that this particular battery pack size would be too small to give you 280 miles of range. Now on the flip side, let's look at a 2170 battery pack. The current 82 kilowatt hour battery pack gets you 4 miles per kilowatt hour. So a 70 kilowatt hour battery pack roughly would get you that 280 miles. So this is a 15% smaller battery pack. So right then and there, that checks out immediately. And again, the charging speed is 18% faster on this battery pack. And we would look at that and say that's pretty close. With an 82 kilowatt hour battery pack, we're talking 7.13 kilowatt hours per hour of charging. On a 70 kilowatt hour battery pack, we'd be talking about 7.44 kilowatt hours per hour of charging. So it's really interesting that the 2170 formula seems to fit this equation a lot better than the 4680, but 4680 is supposed to be the car that comes out of Giga Austin. So this points to one of two things. If it is indeed a 2170 powered Model Y, then perhaps this is not coming from Giga Austin at all, and perhaps this certification is for a new version of the Model Y that we haven't seen in the past and won't be made out of Giga Austin. On the flip side, perhaps it is indeed a 4680 and it's software limited, especially with it being a brand new battery and just now rolling out to the masses. So I would anticipate that that means we're going to get a software unlock to increase range substantially. However, it is possible that they're limiting the available usage of these new cells as they start to roll this out. The only thing that doesn't make sense is why they would put so much additional battery capacity in these cars and not utilize it. So of course, this unfortunately leaves more questions than answers, but as we continue to see cars stack up in the parking lot at Giga Austin, we know for sure that deliveries are imminent. And of course, we'll keep an eye on the EPA's website to see if something new pops up that points to clearly a new Model Y. So we don't know exactly what's happening at Tesla. Could they be transitioning production over at Fremont to a new version of the Model Y and exclusively making the long range performance out of Giga Austin? I think that's unlikely, but it is possible. There's so many things that could be going on, and we just don't have enough information to make a determination on what exactly is going on. There you have it. That is what's going on right now. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, of course, give it the thumbs up. If you haven't already, of course, subscribe to the channel as we continue to post content regularly. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Bearded Tesla. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.